What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Steelers Breakdown Podcast. Nick Farabaugh here with you guys. And as you can see, I have a very special guest. I've been on his podcast, I think, a lot of times, and he's been on mine 0 times. So it was time to change that. Noah Strackbein from All Steelers. How you doing, man?
I'm good, dude. It's about time. You know what I mean? I think I've had you on All Steelers Talk like I think 4 or 5 times this summer, let alone ever. And you're right. I'm glad. I'm happy to be making my debut. I rocked the mullet just because I knew it was a hair day here on the podcast. So I'm excited, bro. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I got a little trim up today. As you can see, the sides are looking a little better today. Um, Training camp preparation. I need to. It's gonna be so hot out there, anyways. I don't need my hair making me hotter. But either way, bro, we're gonna talk about TJ Watt today. And I know a lot of people have become very contentious over this. I can't believe how contentious it has gotten on the good old Bird app. Um, and even in the YouTube comments, I mean, some people saying to trade him, others calling people idiots for saying to trade him. Everyone's saying to extend him. I don't know. You guys are all over the place on this, but Noah, let's just break this down at a top level. Where do you come down on the TJ Watt deal? Right now, I mean, I don't think there, I don't want to say there's not much to talk about because there is, and we'll talk about it in depth, but I still think you and I probably both agree this is going to end with him staying a Steeler and extending, right?
Yeah, yeah. I have not heard. I mean, you sent a tweet out maybe a week or so ago, right around the Minka thing, and that pretty much summed up everything I'm hearing, everything you're hearing, everything everybody else is hearing, because that has been the case. Is that it is not a trade is not going to happen. Moving on from T.J. Watt. Right now, where we stand is most likely not going to happen. Now, this is the NFL. Anything could change. It's like the Aaron Rodgers situation. The whole saga of Aaron Rodgers, it was he's coming to Pittsburgh, but you just never know because at any point something could take a drastic turn. I would say I'm 95% sure that TJ Watt's going to stay a Steeler. That 5% is, Art Rooney walks in the door and kicks a contract off the table and says, "You're out of here." But besides that, I just don't think I don't think it's going to happen. I think the Steelers want him to be a Steeler. I think in any other year where the Steelers aren't doing all of this is just a very quiet time of the season where people are somewhat forgetting TJ still needs a deal. But because things are so dramatic, because things are so crazy right now, they're looking at it and there's things to talk about, and TJ is the one to latch onto. So I think it's a lot of noise for a time of year where, I was pretty stunned Minka got traded because I thought Omar Khan was on vacation.
Yeah, I was pretty stunned Minka got traded too in that deal. I was not surprised by the Ramsey or Jonnu elements. I was surprised by the
No.
Minka element. Um, okay, let's talk about TJ because I have said to you guys on here when I mentioned talking about TJ that I don't think he's going to be traded. The text I got from someone in the Steelers organization was when I asked them if TJ would be traded, they said F no. Literally, that was the bluntest I think text I've ever gotten back from a source. But that was what their reaction was. So I've checked up on this and I've talked to people over the last few days and weeks, and here's kind of what I've heard. Teams have approached the Steelers. The Steelers have not really taken anything seriously on that. Just because teams are calling the Steelers does not mean this trade is happening. The Steelers have not initiated anything. Like, for example, when the Pickens stuff was going on, the Steelers were initiating calls on that front. They are not initiating any Watt calls. I don't think a trade is very likely. Here's what the holdup is, because people are like, what is the holdup? Why is this deal not done? It's the guaranteed money and it's the contract length, from what I understand. Now,
Yep.
no, I don't know if you've talked to people, but from what I understand, their latest offer is actually north of Myles Garrett's $40 million per year. That's what I've heard, but it's the third year guarantee. I mentioned this on the Tuesday live show. It's the third year guarantee plus a contract year, another year on the contract. So he wants to have that 33 where he'll be 33 years old. He wants that year guaranteed because Garrett got that year guaranteed in his year 32 year. Um, that's a tough one for the Steelers. I think I understand why the Steelers don't want to give him a fully guaranteed year when he's 33 years old. He's a speed rusher that primarily relies on explosiveness and speed. How does he look at 33 years old? I think it's a fair question to ask. Can he implement more power into his game? But I'll say this, I think equally the idea to say and throw up in arms to say trade him, given the context of the moves the Steelers have made this year, doesn't make much sense to me.
No, I mean, what are you going to get for a TJ Watt, a third round pick? But I agree with you. Like everything I've heard is the length of contract and the fact that the Pittsburgh Steelers, like, this is a lot easier if TJ does this last year than this year because you hit the realm of TJ's old at the time where this contract ends. And it's not the he's going to be 36 if you sign him to a 5-year deal. The Steelers don't care about that. That's not the holdup here. Like it's 5 years. That's what they need to do because that allows them to spread out all of it, but it's the guaranteed money and how deep into the contract the guaranteed money is going to go. That's where the issue is. Just like you said, I've been hearing the same stuff. And it makes sense. At the end of the day, like I think TJ Watt is one of the greatest players to ever come through the Pittsburgh Steelers organization. I think he's a guy that you keep around forever. He's a gold jacket in a Pittsburgh Steelers uniform type of guy. And trading him makes no sense because you're not going to get Chris Olave in a first round pick, a
Right.
Terry McLaurin in a second. I saw the tweet yesterday from a radio host out here that said Jamison Williams a second and a third. And I was like, that's never going to happen. Like, you're going to get the third. That's what you're going to get. And the Steelers aren't going to do that. But at the same time, like on the Steelers side of this argument, yeah, a 33-year-old TJ Watt making $41 million a year is okay. There are worse things. You could take a shot on that. A 33-year-old TJ Watt making a guaranteed $41 million a year, nah, that's an issue. That's where it becomes a bit of a headache and a concern for both sides. Now, I still think they do it, but I think the argument's there where, TJ's dealt with some injuries. TJ had an off year last year, and he is going to be 33 when he wants this to end. And the Steelers have a real argument to say that shouldn't be the case. No matter who you are, that shouldn't be the case. And again, if you do it last year, this is easy and there's no problem. And the contract ends when he's 35 and he walks away into the sunset. But instead, which again goes back to the Pittsburgh Steelers, they've done this to themselves. You do this a year ago, this is not an issue, but you did it this year, and now the holdup's here, and it makes sense for both sides.
So let's just compare this to Myles Garrett's contract because I think that's obviously going to be the barometer on basically every bit of this deal.
Mm-hmm.
Garrett's contract runs through the 2030 season. However, his guaranteed money runs out after 27. So he has the first 2 years of the new extension guaranteed, which basically means the third year of his deal because he had the one added to the current deal. So he's getting 31 million guaranteed next year and then 30 million guaranteed in 2027. That year he'll be 32. TJ Watt essentially wants the same thing, except Watt this year in the first year of the extension, essentially, or really the last year of his last deal, is going to be 30, turning 31. He'll be 31, turning 32. That year, I actually have no issue with them guaranteeing, bumping the pay this year maybe a little bit because I think they have the cap room to do it, plus giving him the fully guaranteed year next year. It's
Yep.
when he's age 33 that do you want to guarantee 32, 33 million dollars that year? I think that's a hard ask because what if he's done? I mean, the Browns have an escape hatch in this Garrett deal after 2027 when Garrett will be turning 33. So the Steelers would have an escape hatch after the age 33 season if it's a 5-year extension and they get him through his age 35 year, they have an escape hatch or TJ wants to retire at that point, he can with very minimal cap consequences. So there's that to kind of factor in here. The other factor that I just think people aren't talking about enough is how much, and I mentioned it earlier, TJ is a speed rusher. He is not a
Yeah.
power rusher. Garrett is a speed and power rusher. And I think of some of the guys that have aged rather gracefully into the latter years as great edge rushers. Terrell Suggs, power rusher. Think of Khalil Mack, who had a 17 sack season at age 32 or 33 last year. Again, a guy
JJ
that does a little
Watt.
bit of both. So TJ, Noah, what TJ's going to have to do is reinvent his game.
Yep.
And he has power in his game because he flashes it every now and then, but he's one with that rip and dip and that ghost move so often. You're going to have to see him do that. I actually think he can do it. I do. I think TJ has all the tools to become a really good power rusher in his later years. The issue is guaranteeing that age 33 season. What if he loses his explosiveness and has to become a primarily power rusher that year? Is he going to be productive enough to validate what you are paying him. I think that's the issue right now. And then you mentioned the injuries this year. I mean, a hip flexor, thumb injury, and ankle sprain all by the end of the year. He was really good to begin the year, and I think he's still a really good player. I think people forget what he did before he got absolutely battered down the stretch last year. But that has been something with TJ is while he has played banged up
Yep.
very often. And last year it hurt his effectiveness. So something to think about when we're talking about TJ. I wanted to mention those factors because I think it's important to put into context. So the Steelers are either going to somehow have to convince TJ, probably through overpaying him, I'd say average per year probably, and
Yep.
putting more money this year to sign the deal without the third year guaranteed, come somewhere in the middle ballpark of guaranteeing part of that third year and something there. Or they're just going to have to kowtow to TJ, guarantee the third year, and maybe get TJ to not take and maybe shorten the contract a little bit or something like that. There's going to be so they kind of have to weigh this. So the structure of this deal, I think, is why this is taking so long. I just wanted to break that down for people.
Yeah, look at I agree, and the problem is that shortening the deal, like, what does it do? You know, like you, if your guaranteed money's gone after the third season, it doesn't matter if TJ's here till he's 35 or just before he's 36. Like, there's no guarantee money. They can move on at any point. You know, that they could look at it and say, we're ready to go. Maybe a small cap hit, but it's not going to be significant to where you're worried about that. I agree. I do think in the power rushing thing, which, you know, I think it's a real concern, a real cause for concern for sure. JJ Watt is the name that I toss out there because JJ Watt, by the end of his career, was a power rusher. That dude will, I mean, and during the beginning of his career, he was a power rusher, but he definitely had some speed. But by the end of it, that dude was a just punch you in the mouth, get through you type of guy. And if TJ is going to spend his off seasons learning from anybody, well, thankfully it's his brother who still looks like he could play in the NFL today and probably has a little bit left in the tank to be able to show him. So that's a positive. I think the easiest way to go about this is simply to give him more money up front. Is to just say, here's a higher per year, because look at if TJ Watt falls off a cliff after the age of 32 before he's 33 years old and the Steelers have to move on from him, that's a real concern. But if the Steelers have to pay him an extra $2 million a year for the next 3 years, that's not a concern because you have the money to spend. You're able to do these things. You'll have to start handing out some contracts, but unless Joey Porter Jr. has 7 interceptions this season, he's not getting a ridiculous contract at the end of the year. Calvin Austin's going to be worth like $6 million a year. Jaylen Warren's going to be worth minimal money if you choose to keep him. Broderick Jones, minimal money if you choose to keep him. Pat Fryermuth's already paid. Deshaun Elliott's already paid. Like, you have money to spend. You don't have a quarterback. If you go and get a quarterback next year, you have 4 years before you're paying that guy $27-28 million a year. So you have money to spend. I think if you look at it in the sense of, you know, you're worried about him falling off and him not being able to finish out this contract before the guaranteed money is over and be as productive as he is, which, you know, I'll ask you the question, like, what is a half productive TJ Watt? Is it 11 and a half sacks? Because
Yeah.
it's still pretty freaking good. You know, that's not a bad year. But I think the easiest way to go about it is just pay him more money on on a yearly average to suffice for it, and, you know, see what happens at the age of 33. But right now you have the money to spend.
Yeah. I mean, my guess is, and my guess is what's going to end up happening is they end up giving him the third year guarantee. That's just my guess is what.
Yeah, oh, same. Very much so same. I think that he's going to get guaranteed. I think TJ is going to get the contract that he wants. You know what I mean? Last time he didn't get the contract he wanted. This year, he's tossing up do signs on Instagram, and he's not showing up to minicamp, and he's probably not going to show up to training camp, and the Steelers are going to pay him because you don't sign Aaron Rodgers and trade for DK Metcalf and get rid of Minkah Fitzpatrick for Jalen Ramsey and Jonnu Smith and make all these moves just to say, we'll just let TJ walk. No, you take a risk, and TJ Watt. Look, if any player's worth the risk, it's TJ Watt, and I think at the end of the day, that's a justification they'll come to at some point.
I agree, and I do think the fan base kind of turning on him that I've seen, I think is a little wild.
Yeah,
I don't. I think some of the trade scenarios thrown out. 2 first round picks, a star player plus the first, a star player plus a second. It's probably not going to happen like that. They could. I think they could maybe fetch a first, a late first from like a team like the Lions or something. But more likely, I think would be like 2 day 2 picks,
Yep.
a day 2 pick plus like a solid wide receiver 2 type maybe, but not a
Yep.
superstar. I don't necessarily see all that happening. So I don't think it's even franchise changing draft capital that you're necessarily. If you offered me 2 first round picks, I think you'd have a little bit more discussion. I don't think that that's on the table. And so the Steelers, I think, are just not even thinking about a trade. So we'll see where this TJ Watt situation goes. I'm expecting it to draw out a little bit, and I'm expecting this to get done probably shortly before week 1. I mean, last time it took 2 days before the first week of the season before he signed. I would not be surprised if we see a very similar deal this year happen there. And I think as time gets closer and the pressure builds, the Steelers are probably the likelier side to cave in rather than um, not. So we'll see where that goes. But I want to get off the TJ Watt talk, Noah, because I have you here, and I want to ask you a few things. And so
Yes, sir.
let's talk about this safety room too. After Minka got traded, do you believe in Juan Thornhill as a starting free safety of the Pittsburgh Steelers?
Wow, dude, just throwing it right out there to start, huh? It stinks because I like Juan Thornhill. I think he's a massive upgrade over DeMonte KZ. I think he's capable of being a spot starter for the Steelers. I trust him out there as the third safety, but I trust him as the third safety. He is not, you don't trade Minka Fitzpatrick and replace him with Juan Thornhill. It goes against everything you've done this offseason. The Steelers, again, it goes back to TJ. You signed Aaron Rodgers, you chased Aaron Rodgers for 3 months. You traded a second round pick for DK Metcalf because you knew you were getting rid of George. You went out and you got a new defensive line and a new corner, and then you made a splash for Jalen Ramsey and Jonnu Smith to make sure that you had receiving options and another veteran star to replace Minka Fitzpatrick. You don't just say, all right, Juan Thornhill and Miles Killebrew, that's it. No, you can't do that. You have to go out. And if there were no options, I'd say this is a different conversation because you could say, well, is trading somebody worth it when you have a hybrid guy in Jalen and maybe Darius Slay could do the same thing. Beanie Bishop played a little bit of safety last training camp before he was plugged into the nickel full time. Like, you have options. But you look at free agency and there's 4 guys sitting there that you go, any one of these guys is fine. And you go get Justin Simmons tomorrow. You did not go backwards at all at safety. You've stayed put. And if you make Jalen your safety, cool. I kind of like that too. But, yeah, right? Like, I'm not as on board as everybody wants to be with Jalen Ramsey playing safety. I think it's cool, but I also think that Jalen Ramsey is still a really good corner. And why would you move him from corner? That just doesn't make. So to me, the answer is no. It would be maybe if you didn't have so many options in free agency to go out and sign, immediately, and they should do that.
Yeah, maybe down the line with Ramsey, not this year. He's still a really good athlete and still a good
Yeah,
player. I think he could play safety in like sub packages and be like a pseudo safety dime backer. Remember like Cam Sutton's role back in the day?
yeah,
Kind of like
exactly.
that. He could be that, but I don't see him lining up at safety and base defense really. I don't see that happening very often. I think with Thornhill, I have a few concerns. Obviously, he was great with the Chiefs, and so maybe he can find that form again. And then obviously, he's a Pro Bowler because that's what his peak was with the Chiefs. He was that type of guy, and he was a ball hawk. And that's why he got a big deal with Cleveland. But he's been hurt a lot in Cleveland. He's
Yep.
had calf injuries and other soft tissue issues. He had a shoulder thing last year. The tackling was abysmal on tape last year. Some of it may have been related to that shoulder injury, but it was not good. He was picked on in coverage. Like there was a lot bad on Juan Thornhill's tape. So I love the idea of signing Juan Thornhill when they did because I thought it was a great upside, right? This guy could be a great player for you if he finds previous form. If he doesn't, then he's probably a third safety. I mean, that's kind of what he is. And here's the thing, Noah. You mentioned, you can't just run in there with Miles Killebrew and those guys. And who is the backup free safety? Like, I actually am looking at the roster. Is it Quindell Johnson? Is it Deshaun Jameson? Like,
Ugh.
who is the backup free safety? Like, I
It,
think that's a legit question.
It's Miles Killebrew. It's got to be Miles Killebrew.
Hey, that's a
Sebastian
box safety.
Castro, maybe if you're feeling a UDFA to make a splash, but this
Another
guy's
box safety.
yeah, like what I it just doesn't make sense. Like there's no that's why to me the answer is so easily no. And so like it's such a strong no, is because you have Deshaun Elliott and then you have another Deshaun Elliott who was banged up last year and couldn't tackle well. And you don't have anybody else. Like you have to go get you need a third safety. The Steelers utilize three safeties. If somebody gets hurt, which they've dealt with the last couple of years, you need another guy. They've never trusted Miles Killebrew to play defense ever. Like,
Yeah.
so unless they're moving, Brandon Eccles to safety or Beanie to safety or Darius Slay to safety, which I think that one there's an argument for, but I still think it's the wrong move. It just doesn't make sense to me. It doesn't make sense to leave that position open after this trade and just say, well, we have Juan Thornhill. That's enough.
Like, let's just go through the safety options. I mean, again, Deshaun Elliott, box safety. Juan Thornhill,
Yeah.
true free safety, but has questions. Miles Killebrew, I mean, he's a goal line package guy. That's when they bring him on in your special teams captain. Sebastian Castro, box safety nickel, not a free safety. I mean,
UDFA.
right. I mean,
Might
I
not make
guess
the
you could
team.
play Deshaun, I guess, back deep, but I'd rather keep him close to the line of scrimmage. That's where he thrives.
Yeah.
It's Quindell Johnson who is like the other true free safety on this roster. Quindell Johnson has three tackles in his career.
Yeah.
Um, like, I mean, he's been in the NFL for 3 years now, but we're not talking about a guy exactly with an extensive resume here. There's actually no true backup free safety on this team,
No.
aside from Juan Thornhill, I think. And so before I even get to, upgrades, which is what I think they should do, and I'll ask you, which one you think they should go after, they just need someone here that actually plays free safety, not named Juan Thornhill. I mean, that's another thing that they need. So out of the guys in free agency, we're talking about the Justin Simmonses, the Julian Blackmans, those guys, Marcus Williams. Who are you going after?
I mean, Justin Simmons. The answer is Justin Simmons, and it's without question. Justin Julian Blackman would be a guy that has a really good argument to be made, but an oblique injury, you're not totally sure if he's 100% healthy. If he's not 100% healthy, like, and again, like if the options were Julian Blackman, Jordan Whitehead, Marcus Williams, yeah, you take a shot on Julian Blackman and you feel pretty okay about it. But Justin Simmons is sitting right there. Like the guy's coming off a 2 interception season. He's still fine. He says he wants to go to a contender. Like it just makes too much sense to me. He plays the role that you're looking for to replace Minka as that deep ball safety. Like there's Marcus Williams is young and maybe has some upside. And I think he had a bad rep in Baltimore and it got bad real fast.
He's
I think
awful.
Jordan Whitehead's a quality number 3. I think if Jordan Whitehead came out here as your number 3 with Juan Thornhill and Deshaun Elliott, really like great. That's a good move, quality move. Justin Simmons is head and shoulders above the pack here. And to me, like he's not going to be expensive. You need the position and he's looking for a contender, like clearly wants to play. So it checks all the boxes. There's no argument on the other side that says, well, he's old. Who cares? Aaron Rodgers is old. He's your quarterback. You're looking to win a Super Bowl. That's what you do. It's a 1-year fix, but it's a good 1-year fix while you wait for next season.
If they're looking for a more long-term fix, Blackman's the answer, I think.
Yeah, easy,
Um,
easy.
he's 27. He's going to be 27 in August.
Yeah,
So that's I really like Julian Blackman. I really do. And I may argue for him over Simmons. I think Simmons was a better player last year than Blackman, but they also have right now, I mean, I'm just looking at the Steelers' roster in 2026. If you're going to trade it for a quarterback, you better be able to fill all those holes. They have a lot of holes right now.
oh yeah,
That's something to think about, I think. So Blackman at least maybe gives you a chance to have someone that fills that void for next year. But Simmons, I do think right now is probably the best option. He had his worst statistical season last year since 2017, but he was still really good on tape. I thought he covered enough ground still. I thought his instincts were very good. Blackman, I think, dealt with a shoulder issue as well. So there's injury concerns with Julian Blackman, although I really like Julian Blackman a lot.
yeah.
So those two are my top two. Whitehead, too much of a strong box guy to me. I think they need a true free here, and Simmons and Blackman both have that capability. Simmons, is a guy that can do either or. Blackman more of a true free, but has played both as well. So I like that versatility if you can play both. Marcus Williams. I'm sorry, I watched the Baltimore tape last year. It was awful. I
Bad,
felt
dude.
bad for the guy. It was real bad. So I'm not super on that train, but I think Simmons or Blackman are your two options, and I think they should make them. I mean, they're going to have the room, I think, to do it. So that's what I would do. But
Yeah, look at the Steelers have cap space available. The more we learn about the Jalen Ramsey contract, the more we realize it's not a big cap hit this season, which makes things fine. Zoom agrees, obviously, and um, and you should like neither of these guys are going to be expensive. But I agree with you. I like Julian Blackman. I think if the Steelers could bring him in for a physical, make sure he's healthy, ready to go, then I think he's worth taking a shot on. And I agree with you. Like, I think he's a long-term guy. I'm kind of surprised that he's been bouncing around the last couple of years the way that he has. Like, to me, he's been a productive player the last 3 or 4 seasons. So I think Julian Blackman, if you could make sure he's healthy, there's nothing wrong with that. And there's more upside, I think. But with Justin Simmons, I think it's a safe bet. And I think both of them cost almost nothing. And you should, like, there's no question. You should go out and get them.
I agree. I agree. I think you really should. So okay, I'm going to throw some rapid fire questions at you, and I want your answer. Okay.
Yes, sir.
The
I'm ready.
Steelers' wide receiver 2 in week 1 will be
Roman Wilson. That's who it's going to
Roman
be.
Wilson. Okay.
No questions asked. There, look at Calvin Austin's going to be the inside guy. He will be the wide receiver too. Roman's going to be the outside guy. I have a lot of faith in Roman. Again, like, he's got a lot to prove, but who's he competing against? Robert Woods? No, I think Roman's going to come out here. He's going to impress enough. If I had to bet what position they're going to add, it's going to be safety and not wide receiver. I think Roman Wilson's wide receiver too come week 1.
Okay. I like that answer. The Steelers' breakout player this season will be.
Oh, that is a great question. That is a great question. Um, does Jalen Warren count as a breakout
I'd
player?
say
Like,
so.
yeah, Jalen Warren. Look at people can love Caleb Johnson all day long, and I love Caleb Johnson. I think that dude is a stud. And when he got drafted, I spent like 2 hours because our nights during the draft, you get home like 2 in the morning. You're wide awake because your adrenaline's going nuts. I literally sat on my couch just watching highlights of Caleb Johnson taking pitches around the corner, and I was like, this guy's vision is unbelievable. You could be hyped about Caleb Johnson in the future. Jalen Warren's been waiting for a bigger opportunity and deserves one. I think if you put Jalen on the field for 50, maybe 60% of the snaps, this dude's 1,000, maybe a 1,200 yard rusher plus some receiving yards. I'm going Jalen Warren. I'm a big Jalen Warren guy this year.
I like it. I got two more questions for you. This next one. The surprise player that will make the team is.
Could I give you two?
Sure.
One of them will be like, less serious. One of them will be more serious. My less serious one that I think is a possibility that we're not talking about right now is Corliss Waitman.
Hmm.
Punter competition is going to be real. I think Cameron Johnston's an absolute lunatic, and that guy's awesome. But I don't know how healthy he is right now. I don't know if he's back to 100%. I don't know if it's going to hold up, and I know the Steelers really liked Corliss Waitman. So Corliss Waitman's the fun one, although I am rooting for look, I went up to Cameron Johnston after I think it was the preseason game last year, whenever he trucked the dude on the sidelines. And I just said, hey, is this just like what Australians do? And he was like, yeah, man. He's like, I don't lift to not hit people. I was like, that's so awesome. Corliss Waitman's my fun one, but I don't know how serious. I wouldn't put money on that one. My guy's biggest surprise to make the roster this season. That is such a good question. That's such a good question. Sebastian Castro, but I don't think he's a big surprise. To be honest. I would have went DJ Thomas Jones if they didn't trade for Jonnu Smith, but I think that's off the table as well. Is it crazy to say Skylar Thompson? Is it
That's
crazy?
crazy. You think you're gonna make it over Will Howard? That's
I
pretty.
I I just can't, like, I'm having such a hard time coming up with a name that I think would be surprise. You have a name. Tell me a
I
name.
do. I think DJ Thomas Jones is actually still very much in play because they need another blocker. But
I would love it.
the name I actually think is one of their draft picks, and I don't think people are talking about enough. How about Dante Kent? I thought he
Oh
was.
yeah. Yeah. I
Um,
think Dante Kent's on the roster though. I think he's got an upper hand over Beanie to
you think
be.
he's gonna make it over Beanie? Okay, that's
I don't.
interesting.
I wouldn't bet that, but I think right now going into it, he's got an upper hand over Beanie just because he's faster. He's got kick and punt return ability. He's younger and he's a draft pick. So at the end of the day,
Yeah.
you immediately have a small upper hand over an undrafted guy who got benched a year ago. So I Dante Kent's a good one. Dante Kent, he was on my mind for sure, for sure.
Yeah, he was my name. All right, last one I'm gonna ask you.
Oh, wait. I got one. I got one more name for it. Does Cordero Patterson count in this conversation?
Yeah, he definitely counts. I think a lot of people don't think he's making it.
Cordero Patterson might be the biggest surprise to make the Pittsburgh Steelers roster in 2025, but I would toss it. It just makes no sense. So at this point, I've given in to trying to question it. I think I just accept it that Cordero Patterson will probably be on the roster in 2025.
If you say Cordero Patterson, that is absolutely categorized as a surprise. There's no doubt about it. All right, I'm going to give you the biggest question now. Who will win the Chief Award?
Oh,
That's for media cooperation for those that don't know.
that's a good one. To be honest, I think Pat deserved it last year. Pat Fryermuth. He had my vote a year ago. I know he wants to win. I have been told that per sources, Pat Fryermuth would like to win the Chief Award. So I think at some point we need to give it to him.
By per
Um,
sources, do you mean him coming up to every single one of us in the locker room asking us to
Yes,
vote for?
per sources was Pat telling me he wants to win the Chief Award. So shout out to Pat. But you can't give it to him because the winner of the Chief Award leaves the year after almost always.
Yeah,
So that's wasn't it? It was Dan Moore last year. I'm pretty
yeah,
sure. Shout
yeah.
out. Hope he's doing well in Tennessee. I would go Pat. My second guess would be. I'm going to give you maybe a shot in the dark. I'm going to go Aaron Rodgers. I think
Rodgers,
I
wow,
think there's a
that's
shot Rodgers realizes that the Pittsburgh media is not the New York media, and maybe he's a little spiteful for it, and he's just ready to give some good answers. So I'm gonna shot in the dark here. Aaron Rodgers. Pat's my real guess, but Rodgers is. I'm gonna toss a sleeper out there.
my immediate guess was Slay. I think Slay's got to be
I
on.
think Slay came to mind, but that's like such a boring answer. Like a veteran
And
corner who, like, you're not going to go up and be like, Darius, man, you're 34 years old. Like, here are these hard questions. It's like, no, how could you help Joey Porter Jr. and Corey Trice? It's the same questions he gets asked everywhere.
my,
So,
my, my next question to you might be how many times people call him Darius and he corrects them to say Slay because that's what he does all the time. If you call him Darius, he says it's Slay.
it's
So
Slay.
make
It's
sure you
Slay.
call him Slay, not Darius.
I love that. I will know that right from the jump. It's Slay. I'll never refer to him as Darius ever again. Ever again.
There's going to be some like TV reporter on the first day of camp when we're seeing them come in and report that's going to ask Darius and he's going to correct them and say it's Slay. I know.
I I hope it's some random, which maybe I shouldn't hope this, but I hope it's some random television that's never shown up to a day of mini camp or anything and they're just staring at each other so awkward, like what do I do now? Like what happens here? That's what I hope happens. Shout
Oh
out
my
to
God.
Slay, man. Shout out
That
to
would be
Slay.
wild, bro. That would be wild. But Noah, thanks for coming on, man. Tell them where they can watch your stuff, read your stuff, follow you, all that great stuff.
Yes, sir. Pleasure to be on. Looking forward to the next. I think I still owe you about 4. So, you let me know. You guys can find my written work at si.com/NFL/Steelers. And then you can check out the podcast, All Steelers Talk, at youtube.com/All Steelers Talk Monday through Friday.
All right, folks, make sure to like, comment, subscribe, turn on notification bell here on Steelers on Penn Live. Read the stuff, pennlive.com/Steelers. Follow me on Twitter, Farabaugh FB, Blue Sky, Nick Farabaugh. Thanks for watching, everybody. Be back tomorrow.